you very much. I found myself a new campaign manager. He said a lot of things that I did not even remember. For example, that I was called to the bar in 1975, quite some years ago, and that I started with a firm called Christie Ingram and Company, then morphed into Christie Davis and Company, then morphed into Davis and Company. And then I thought about, what were the incidents that caused the morphing. And then I remember what it was. I only had 2 law partners in my lifetime until I brought on, I think, Ian Wind and Philip McKinsey later on in life. And but they were very awful partners. And I had great difficulty dissolving the partnership. But I found a secret. I had to make each one of them prime minister. And there it was, that it became Davis and Co. That's why I need my new campaign manager, because it seems that I may be headed somewhere as well. Because I think Winder and McKinsey might think I'm a bad partner as well, and they may need to get rid of me. Talking with partnership, and the law, it's always often said that, the genesis of being a good advocate is being able to communicate, and to communicate effectively, and recognizing what communication is all about, and the use of language and words, and what we convey and the message we send often tells the difference of success or non-success, and also tells the difference of how one accepts what is said. And I, again, sitting and reflecting on the past and being reminded of some of the things I've been involved in over the many years, again I go back to my partnership. And that was, again, with Christie and Ingram. One of my partners was known to like his Kalik. Another was Beck Spear. Kalik came later. And the other was just a teetotaler. And as partners, we like to take account of each other's conduct during the course of any given day. And we had a logbook that we recorded each other's conduct. And each one of us, every other week, would have charge of recording each other's conduct. And one day, my partner, Christie, who was the senior partner at the time, he closed a very large deal, made us a big fee, and we thought that it would be good for him to go on a furlough and say, look, you take 2 days off. And he went, the first day he came in that morning, he said, look, take the day off, you did very well, you made a lot of money. So he went out. Instead of staying out, he came, there's a mic. Oh, I understand there's a mic. Oh, sorry. So you hear me? So he ran out, and instead of going home, he came back to the office that afternoon. And when he came in, he was a bit tipsy. And about a week later, when Christie was in charge of the logbook, he came running to me. He said, look what Ingram wrote about me on this day. I said, what did he write? Christie drunk today. And he said, now, if anyone looks at this, they'll believe I am a drunkard. And I don't I just happened to go out that day. I felt good because of what we did, and you all gave me permission to go out, and why would you think you write that about me? So I went to Ingram. I said, look, Christy is complaining about what you wrote about him. He's not anyone reading this could believe he's a drunkard. Why don't you, qualify this? Say something. He says, but he looked at me. You saw him? I said, yes, I did. Was he drunk? I said, well, He said, well, I wrote the truth. He said, okay. I said, well, I went back to Christy. I said, well, I saw you that day, yes, and you were, you were kind of, and he said he wrote the truth. I said, well, okay. About a month later, Ingram rushed into my office. Look what Christy did. I said, what did he do? Look what he wrote. I said, what did he write? Ingram, sober today. I said, well, Ingram, were you sober? He said, yeah. I said, well, isn't that the truth? And so that is some of the vagaries of our profession, often. And the way you communicate. You could overstate, understate, and you could the English language is such, construction of sentences are such, that we can convey meanings that are not even there. And even when you tell the truth could appear to be misleading. First of all, let me thank you for inviting me here this morning to speak on this topic of the role of a lawyer as a servant of the people. And I pay my greetings to you. I see Ms. Clifford. You're still here with us. I've had a long history with the school, and I don't want to date myself, even though I may have done it. But it's happy to see you're still here, committed, dedicated, and strong with the school. And to all of you here, teachers, tutors, and all present. Some of you are about to enter the second and final year of studies here at the Eugene Dupuch Law School. Some are in the process of beginning a 2-year trek. The title of this talk would appear to some to be a novel concept. I hope to assist in dispelling this view. First of all, we might appreciate the difference between the law and the lawyer. I know that some think that they are indistinguishable. But if the Holy Bible is any reference of value, you might note that beginning in the first book of the Old Testament, Genesis, through to 1 John in the New Testament, the word law appears almost 700 times. Whereas the word lawyer does not make an appearance until the Gospels, and then fewer than a dozen times. It would seem that the inspired writers of the Bible considered the law of great value and the lawyer of somewhat lesser importance. It is for this reason, if no other, that we should practice humility. We, like every other citizen, are not above the law. In our everyday lives, we citizens are subject to the law. At the same time, we are all obliged to correct bad law. Frequently, we pose the question directly to ourselves and ask, what can I, one lone person, do? The answer always is, and should be, your very best. You are not responsible for the conclusion of an effort, but you are responsible to do your part, to do your very best. We choose to pursue professions for a myriad of reasons. Most of these are readily classified as noble. We want to prepare ourselves to help others. or to be productive in society, or to achieve our personal potential. Whichever of these drives you, you should recognize that your efforts to date have begun to prepare you to play a potentially meaningful role in your community. You are the ones who will determine the quality of what you do. If you choose to develop your talent to its highest potential, then you will benefit society by your efforts to simply make a living. You might also take seriously the concept of the attorney at law as a servant of the people. Though I am first to admit this is a rather overused and even abused term, and I say it in the context, a politician, for example, who practices demagoguery, always paints a picture of him or herself as the paramount servant of the people, even as he or she goes about the process of systematically denying citizens even their basic rights. Take, for example, the history of Europe and Asia during the middle of the last century, when demagogues came to the forefront with figures like Hitler, Stalin, Franco, Mussolini, Kim, Sukarno, just to name but a few. They all sold themselves as saviors of the state and of the people. They all promised to solve all problems, but were really only about establishing absolute control of the people. For all of what we might say about political leaders in our country, we have to recognize that ultimately real power remained with the people through the ballot box. The ruling UDP oligarchy was brought down by the vote of the people in the Bahamas in 1967, even though many thought them so entrenched as to suggest that those opposed to them were quixotic in their attempts. But what those naysayers did not understand was that the young men and women arrayed against the minority rulers during the 1950s were empowered by appreciation of a set of principles which were based on teachings most evident in the first 10 chapters of the Old Testament book of Genesis, and in the teaching of love and responsibility as offered by Jesus Christ in the Gospels, and so eloquently described in Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46. I invite you to read and ponder those teachings as part of your ongoing preparation. I'm an Anglican, and we Anglicans refer to these as the social Gospels. Roman Catholics, over the centuries, have developed a compendium of studies and teachings which they describe as Catholic social teaching. The Methodists, they are actively involved in cooperation with the court, with victims, perpetrators, and the court through a practical effort that is known as restorative justice. So many other denominations offer programs to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and comfort the weary as their response to the admonition found in the Matthew Gospel that I just cited. Those engaged in concerted efforts to protect the environment are also part and parcel of this all-encompassing effort to provide for and to protect the people. I suggest that in your role as servant of the people, you are bound to find how you could further enhance these efforts. To be true to your calling, you cannot casually abrogate your responsibility. The law is a wonderful calling, but it's more than a simple means of making a living. He or she who seeks to become a pastor in a church cannot just be about the pulpit and preaching. They must be about serving the whole man, or they are not being true to their calling. It is just about the pulpit. If it is just about the pulpit, then they are in the entertainment business. Entertainment is certainly not bad, but it's certainly misleading to someone who needs help to go to a pastor to only have a fleeting feel-good moment. The same applies to you in the law. If all you do is sell your talent to the highest bidder with no reference to the underlying principle of the law, which is justice, the same justice referred to in the biblical stories, then you are not being true to the calling. Rather, you would have been guilty of abusing the profession. This is not to say that you are to judge your client. No. Your job is to offer the best service in protecting his or her interests and leave the judging to the court. Every citizen is entitled to legal representation. This means that sometimes your client will be someone who is subsequently judged to have been guilty of criminal acts. Therefore, you must take this injunction seriously and respect the rights of citizens to representation and always give of your very best in their interests. To do less than this is almost like committing a crime. If you accept payment to do one thing, that payment requires you to do your very best. And if you do less than your very best, it will be like taking something from a person without their permission, because their permission encompasses your doing your very best. You are at the next stage in your lives where you begin in earnest the transition from student to practicing professional. You are members of a noble profession, even though a frequently misunderstood one by lay persons. It is easy for anyone to stand before you and pontificate, but you will see through the fraudulent quite quickly, as you would have been trained during the purely academic stage of your studies to see beyond the obvious in the presentation of any argument. I therefore speak to you from my personal perspective as a practitioner before the bar for just under 4 decades, and one who continues to love and to learn the law. For the past 20 years, I have, concurrent with my practice of law, also been involved in the creation of law as a legislator. Before I was called to the bar, I was a law student, an article clerk. I had a view of the law as something almost mystical. After I became a member of Parliament, I became intimately involved in the creation of law and fully appreciated that most laws are created by generally well-intentioned men and women who hope to craft something which would serve to assist people in their lives and build a better nation. I also recall, during these periods in Parliament, a political friend once saying to me that people should be happy when members of Parliament were actively engaged in debate, since as long as they were talking, they were not voting and creating new laws. He suggested that all laws were crafted to, as he said, to take something away from citizens while being presented as giving a boon to those in need. While I appreciate this point of view, I don't fully agree with him. The law is like anything else in life, imperfect, but essentially designed for good. There are many who make their living in the law, from the legislator who makes the law, to the policeman who enforces the law, to the accused who we advise and defend them, to the judge and jury who determine guilt or innocence, to the prison superintendent responsible for the incarceration and rehabilitation of those found guilty and sentenced to a term in prison, and yes, to those who seek to assist in the reintegration of the former inmate back into the community in order to become a productive member of society. I mention all of this because it is essential that you determine what kind of role you are going to play in the law. You are at the point where you have had the benefit of your professors' suggestions of a predisposition to certain aspects of the law. Your parents, your friends, and your colleagues have described their views. You certainly have essentially determined which direction you plan to take. Besides your studies in the law, you have lived in communities and most certainly have been impacted by activities in that community or society. You've been involved in a faith community. You would have been involved in debating societies, formal or otherwise. You would have frequented entertainment facilities. In short, you've had the opportunity to appreciate other cultures, which will serve you well in appreciating the need to always be careful to understand the social and cultural background of future clients and those opposed to you in litigation. Too often, we believe that we are the center of the universe and everything revolves around our needs and our values. Well, the truth is that to the rest of the world, we, that is to say the Bahamas, are primarily either a tourist destination or a legal jurisdiction for the financial services sector. When others from the outside interact with us, this is what they see at first glance. It is only when they get to spend time with us that they begin to appreciate, as we all do, that we are so much more. Because of your profession, you are more likely to come into intimate contact with important people from other societies more often than most of your fellow citizens. The impression they get from you will most likely color their overall impression of our country. You therefore have decided to take on a large responsibility for the future of your country. And how do you do this? Some folks have gone into the law because they have heard stories of great wealth being achieved. This is the same view that encouraged some others to go into certain branches of medicine or accounting or other professions known for the movement of large amounts of money. This is the business side of a profession. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with making money. Nothing at all. I did. But making money is just business. There's also the practice of law. There is a difference between the business of law and the practice of law. You must never allow one to completely subsume the other. You are entitled to make a living, and as a good living as your talents and efforts will permit. But you should always live up to the high ideals of the practice of law as those who drew you to the profession. I know that this is an overused and abused term, but you must strive to practice your law as a true servant of the people. This is what will bring honor to your practice as an attorney. This is the nobility of our profession. As you are growing up, you would have heard from your parents, your teachers, and your pastors suggestions that there was great value in doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is not idle thought. If you make it the linchpin of your practice, you will find that yours will be a practice of integrity. This will serve you well in all that you do. You will be challenged in this effort. At each step of the way, in your career, you will find opportunity to choose whether you will actively be involved as a protector and defender of the rights of citizens, or if you will participate in attacks against the intrinsic rights of people. The values which have been inculcated in you by how you were raised will greatly impact which route you follow. There's great benefit in appreciating your tendencies before finally deciding the route you will take in this career. After all, the quality of what you craft in your life's calling will depend to a great extent on the passion with which you approach the work. It is often said that in almost any project, passion is more valued than experience. Passion is not something you develop. It is developed by circumstances of your life and your ongoing interests. It will take personal discipline to follow your passion. Others will not necessarily understand why you would choose certain subjects of law over more lucrative or public practice. And again, speaking of practice, the term relates to the reality that you never finish learning the law. It's a lifetime process. In each new question brought to you by a client, you will find yourselves hitting the books as a means of ensuring that your client receives the benefit of thorough research and therefore an opinion based on the latest legal information. You could just as easily choose to take the easy route, but this will eventually tell how well your clients find they are faring as a result of your lack of effort. They won't be quiet. As you know, reputation is the single most important aspect of public reference. In your practice, you will frequently find yourself able to help the process of protecting the people by being a buffer between the demagogues in the public sector and your clients and citizens. This often comes as pro bono work without direct remuneration, and yes, it comes with the territory, pro bono work. Some attorneys forget this, but I trust that you will not be among them. This pro bono work inherent in either legislation or policies, which, if left unchecked, could lead to abuse against the weaker members of our society. For some practitioners of the pro bono work becomes their life focus, with commercial aspects of the law serving as a means of paying the bills while serving those in need, but without means to pay for their legal services. The same view is what calls men and women to other professions of services to dispossess in our society, religious and the like. I trust that I've been able to suggest that you are entering a field that many consider privileged, and that while you will have earned the right to participate on completion of your studies here at the Eugene Dupuch Law School, you maintain the right to respect within the profession by how you carry yourself and how you conduct the practice of law. May you all go on to make all of us who support you exceedingly proud to know you. I thank you, and good morning. I was told by Mr. Guy, let's see, that I'll be subject to cross-examination. having given my evidence in chief, I am now subject to cross-examination.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Any questions that you'd like to ask? Any comments you'd like to make, Rose?